I'm the the Senior Vice President of Marketing for the Great State Fair of Texas. We are really excited that this is the second Blue Ribbon selection tasting for this year. This is an unusual year, obviously. We would love to be doing this at the fair because we can't be celebrating with each other this year. We decided to go virtual. We couldn't host the wine garden like we normally do. So we decided to take a series of virtual tastings as well as put together a box of wine from across the state of Texas that represents some of the best and the variety and the diversity that's out there in Texas wine. The mission of the state fair is to support agriculture, education, and community involvement. And the agriculture piece of it is we take that very seriously. And we feel the wine industry is something that we want to showcase and support. And so each year there is a wine garden at the State Fair of Texas, and you can come and taste up to 40 different types of Texas wines. So we didn't want to lose that this year just because we weren't able to celebrate in person. So I enlisted a few Texas wine experts to help us put together this Blue Ribbon box. Heather Queen, she is the founder of Queen of Grape. She is a personal wine concierge. We have Jason Hisaw, who is the portfolio manager for Republic Distribution. He is also a Texas wine ambassador. And we have Shelly Wilfong, who's a wine educator and the creator of the podcast, This is Texas Wine. And they helped us look at all the vast different types of opportunities that were out there for us to put different types of wine in this box and helped us narrow it down to a 12 case that I think is truly amazing. And I think people are really enjoying. And we're getting great feedback on how much everybody likes the boxes. And they are still available. I will post the link to that in case anybody still wants to buy that. Also tonight, we sort of have a great panel. Tonight is a lot of history of Texas wine sitting on this video chat with us. We have Ed and Susan Auler from Fall Creek, along with Sergio Cuadra, who is their winemaker. And there's a lot of history there, and we can't wait to talk about that. We have Kim McPherson from McPherson Cellars, who's joining us from Lubbock. And we also have Eric Sigmund of Reddy Vineyards, who is their COO. So I'm excited to get into the wine. I've already opened my bottle, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm gonna turn it over to Heather to start maybe talking a little bit about that first wine that we wanna start talking about.
So we're gonna do these a little in progressive order here. And we're gonna start with the McPherson Sparkling Chenin Blanc. I'm actually going to very quickly turn that over to Kim. Thank you very much for showing us that bottle. He is in Lubbock in his tasting room here. And I'm going to let you tell him about this wine because it is such a great, it's a great wine, and I love Chenin Blanc. So Kim, take it away.
Well, thank you, and it's a great pleasure to be here. This is a 100% Chenin Blanc grown up here on the Texas High Plains. The grower is a gentleman by the name of Russell Leopard. The Chenin Blanc vineyard's 12 years old now, I think. He picks his just for us for sparkling. Everything is machine picked up here on the High Plains. So we make the cuvee, and once the cuvee is finished, this goes to my brother in California because he has all the Charmat equipment. He's got $1 million worth of Charmat equipment, so I don't have that. And we make it into a sparkling wine, and he keeps part of it for his owner's winery in Johnson City called Carter Creek, and then we get the other 400 cases. And I guess we've been doing this for the last 4 years or so, and so it's turned out it's always been a real big hit, and it's 100% Chenin. So I guess you could call it almost like a Cremant de Loire. It's we have found that Chenin Blanc does better on a Cremant system, and that's like how Proseccos are made. They're made in a tank under pressure and bottled under pressure. If we left this on the lees for, I don't know, a year or so, I think it would change the aromatics of a Chenin Blanc of this wine. And I kind of go with my brother's because he's been making sparkling wine in California now for 30 years. So I sort of leave that up to his knowledge of that. So I hope y'all enjoy that.
Can we call it Cremant de Teja?
Call it anything.
So I think maybe we should put it into for Cremant de Teja.
It's just a brut It's about 1.25, 1.2% residual, and it's just a very, very nice, refreshing, sparkling wine. And we run out of this every year, so we're not upping the production.
And it's a great aperitif wine. We have it. There's quite a few restaurants in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that serve it by the glass. I know one of them, the Rancho Las Colinas, serves it, and it's perfect for a plate of raw oysters or shellfish or anything like that. But it's a great aperitif wine. So I enjoyed showing this wine around town.
Jason and I decided on the last podcast that this would be a great pairing with the corn dog from the state fair. So
That's true.
we would suggest that.
Yeah. I'm still going funnel cake. I'm just saying. I'm really a big fan of that funnel cake.
Everyone is. So.
No, right?
I stumped the last panel with what would you pair this with at the fair. So giving you guys fair warning, you may want to think about what your favorite fried food is that you would pair that with.
Go ahead, Sergio.
Just gonna ask Kim if this is made every year as a batch, as a vintage, or you're planning to kind of continue certain.
We could vintage date this, but we don't. But it's we do it every year. In fact, we just sent the 20 out on Monday. We had, I don't know, 6 totes or 7 totes out there. I used to filter it and clean it all up, and my little brother said, "Nah, just leave it because I'm going to put it right back in a tank." And last year's went through a malolactic, which we didn't intend for that to happen, but it did, and it actually we may start doing that, making it, letting it go through malolactic, because it became a really, every year my brother goes, "This is the best one you've made." No, this is so we'll see. I don't know. It's pretty. It's a little pretty wine, and like I said, this isn't our regular Chenin because we get that from a very old vineyard up here in Hockley County, the old vines. But this is Russell's, and he machine picks this, and the guy, we say, we want it at 18 or we want it at 17.8, and he'll pick 2 rows to see what it is, and then if it's not there, what do you do with those grapes? He said, "We just dump them." I don't know what he does, but he's an impeccable grower, and so he'll pick this, and it's beautiful.
So there's someone on the watching that was in Professor McPherson's chemistry class in the fall of 1972.
Did he pass?
I don't know. That's a good question. Jeff, let us know if you passed. So.
Nice.
So that does lead us to say you have quite a history, and you have some, so can you give us a little bit of background of your, kind of where you've been in the Texas wine industry and when you started, and kind of the history of McPherson?
In a quick synopsis,
Sure.
My father started Llano Estacado Winery in 1976. Him and his good buddy Bob Reed, and my dad first planted his vineyard Sagamore in 1968. He had over 140 different varieties in that to see what would work on the high plains. They raised capital, and in 1976 they did open Llano Estacado Winery. And from there, it's, my mother's still a stockholder, and it's a huge winery now. There are 165,000 cases, but started out very small. And I remember Ed was very close behind on that with his winery. And I'd always remember he and my dad would talk about, how did you do this? When did you do this? How did you get the Texas, the law to do this? They were always exchanging, like, and it was kind of, Ed, you probably remember all this, don't you? About, they'd call each other up, go, "Well, you got to go to this guy to get this law. You got to go over here." And, it was wild. And Llano Estacado Winery was built in a wet precinct. And if you don't know what those are, back in the day, Lubbock was totally dry. You had to go out of the city limits to buy beer, wine, or liquor. And you could only build a winery in a wet precinct. And so that's why it's so far out of town. And it was in a wet precinct. And so it's just grown from there. And my dad, over time, he had Cabernet and Sauvignon Blanc. We found that those varieties were not really the right ones that we thought up here on the high plains. And so we went to Italian Sangiovese, and we've done that. So he has Sangiovese. And so this is what we stuck with. And that's probably my flagship red, because we've been making that since 1998. So is that good? And then I left Llano and I went to Bonham, Texas, in a winery that a bunch of guys owned, a dentist for the Dallas Cowboys, and Bruce Crampton, the pro golfer. We had a great time, but we went broke. And then I went back to California and was out there for a couple of years. And then the guys at Caprock, it's Caprock Winery, which used to be Tasha, the bank took that over, and the bank president and CEO was a guy that I grew up across the street from, and kind of made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So we came back and resurrected Tasha, turned it into Caprock, and they had to sell it because of the guys in the banking business said you can't own a winery. And then I started my own label back in '98 from that point. So anyway, that's basically in a nutshell.
So just so you know, the person who asked it, they had your class. I'm pretty sure he passed your class because he's related to me and I know that story. So
My dad retired in 1983, emeritus professor, and he just started messing around in his vineyard. And it's Sigmund, we're still there. We do some estate bottling off of it, and it's a great old vineyard. So, but it's in the city limits now. It used to be out of the city limits. So,
thank you very much for that. We're going to move to does anybody have any questions? You can put them in the chat if you want to ask a question. And Jen's looking at those and putting them out there. We're going to move to the Fall Creek, which is where I am at this moment in time. We tried to be out in the vineyard, but we couldn't get the Wi-Fi to be stable. So we'll probably go out there and take a picture and show it to everyone. But if you see down here, Sergio and Ed Auler and his wife will be joining us in a few minutes. Sergio, I would love for you to talk about Escondido Valley a little bit, why you picked it, and the grapes that you're sourcing from there. And then maybe, Ed, if you could give us a little history about the hill country down here and y'all building this winery and making it into what it is.
Yeah, well, thank you for the invitation, first of all. Yeah, this Sauvignon Blanc comes from Escondido Valley, which is in Fort Stockton area, Pecos County, some 4.5 hours west from Austin on your way to El Paso. The vineyards, it's actually where Mesa Vineyards is, and that's the place, the name of the place, Escondido Valley. So it's like 3,000 feet elevation, still a bedrock of limestone on top. So soils are in a way similar to what happens in parts of the hill country. So high pH soils, lots of calcium content, and it's a desert. So not a lot of rain over there, as you can imagine. And they have a bunch of varieties. Two of them are those whites, the whites that we make from them, the Sauvignon Blanc and also Chenin. And so we have managed to kind of fine tune the harvest date for Sauvignon Blanc. We've been going back in time, so to speak, to get him a little fresher in a way. So we're aiming for 21.5 bricks but I'm not mad if it's 21 bricks. And so it's all machine harvested, so it's all harvested at once. And well, and then the juice gets cold settled. I mean, press the berries, of course, and the juice gets very clean. The cold settling is very kind of strict to get a very clean juice before fermentation. Ferments in a stainless steel tank for about 4 weeks at about 57 degrees. And from then on, it's just cleaning it, stabilizing it, and going to the bottle. So no particular aging, just the idea to keep the aromatics of Sauvignon Blanc just as concentrated as possible in the bottle and in the glass. So this is the 2019, another good year for that variety in the Escondido Valley. And like I said, the wine, it's all about aromatics, as we all know about Sauvignon Blanc. But one thing that I have found is, Sauvignon Blanc, as it ripens during the season, it accumulates, or it concentrates different kinds of aromas, and they go up in a peak, and they go down as it ripens. And what happens in Escondido, having a hot weather environment, we find grapes in all stages of ripening. Even though the average might be 21 breaks or 22 breaks, there are grapes at 19, maybe even less, or grapes at 23. And that comprises a whole, rich palette of aromatics that are all together coming now and joining together. So that's why it's very, very wide, the fan of aromatics is very open. So all the way from grassy aromatics to more riper fruit like peaches or stone fruits. But going through the green apple, the honeysuckle, and all those. So it's really a wide expression of Sauvignon Blanc in one glass. That's how I like to describe it.
So there's a question, and this is really for all of you, and you can answer it however you'd like. They want to know, what are the best vintages for your varietals? And there's so many varietals, so I'm gonna let you pick your best varietal and your best vintage. Who wants to start? Or your favorite varietal and your favorite vintage?
But that, I think, is a really tough question, because the term best is an elusive term. And, the wine can be best in 1 year that you've seen, and then there may be another factor that enter in and give you a new factor that gives a whole new dimension to the wine. And I don't want to sound like a politician avoiding an answer, but we can talk about some of our wines that in particular years have done, fantastic. We had, Kim do the same thing. We've had, wines that have gotten prestigious awards, best of classes, and lots of, ratings and competitions. And, we've gotten some high ratings from some wine writers of late, but it's really hard to say best, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I would add to that in the hill country, at least in 2016, we had a very low cropping year, but high quality year. And then we were all hoping to keep the quality in 2017, and we had the quality and also the quantity. So, and then 2018 came, another very good year. So it's kind of, and also a lot of the grapes are reaching, let's say, above 8 to 10 years, maybe 12 years old. So they're really getting their best or their plateau kind of quality. They were well established, deep roots. And so we're watching them, you know, being at their best from those best years on. So I'm pretty excited about the last 4 vintages, for example.
Well, we are very excited about those because one of the, really relates to the reason why Sergio is here. You know, to digress a bit into the history, which I think Heather, you wanted us to talk about. Fall Creek became about because of a trip that Susan and I took to Europe in 1973, and I was amazed that in certain parts of France, not all of them by any stretch, but certain parts that looked so much like the hill country. And I said, golly, I wonder if we can do this at home. And Susan said, well, I'm sure somebody would have done it if they could. And we got home and found out that some people had done it. In fact, the Spaniards had done it, not in our area, but in far west Texas, in the valley near El Paso, and it had been successful. And it's a very long story, but Spain wanted no grapes and no olives in the New World, and it wasn't really, and grape growing efforts weren't continued. And so in the 1700s, when the missions were being built around San Antonio, the Spaniards saw, the Canary Islanders saw these grapes and wanted to plant vineyards and make wine. And again, Spain said no. So then in the 1800s, when people came here from Europe, some by boat, some by land to Texas, they tried planting vineyards, in many cases in the wrong areas. The grapes didn't do well, and they planted native varieties. And we actually had 20 some odd wineries, I think it was, before Prohibition came along. That was the end of that, except for the Valverde winery. So while I was observing all this, the cattle market went completely south. All about something else to do in addition to raising cattle, and thought about grapes. That's when I met Kim's dad, because we were A&M and Tech and UT were colluding to try to figure out whether this is something that they ought to do. In any event, we decided to give it a try, planted our vineyards in 75 and became a winery in 79. As Kim said, talking to Yano all the time, talking to Doc McPherson, trying to, hey, do this, do that, or this is how you do, or how do you get this done? It was all a very close relationship. And we grew over the years and concentrated on our vineyards. And then when we had some vineyard difficulties, we started spreading out. And it was kind of a blessing because we found out where many of the really good areas are. You know, grape growing is such a local matter. It's like, you know, real estate or drilling for oil. It's location, location, location. And so we found what we believe were some of the better sites, and thought we could actually have a real good chance of putting Texas wines on the world map. And that's when Sergio joined us. And he had been the winemaker for 10 years at Concha Toro, also at Calaterra, which was a Mondavi operation, and then later was working with Paul Hobbs, and Paul was the one that found him for us. And we're so thankful he came here, because since then he has really been fulfilling our wishes of seeing our wines increase every year, with in many cases getting our wines on the world map. And so how does this relate to the original question? I think it gets back to the fact that, you know, we can all cite, you know, awards we got in 1990 something or in 2000, but the wines are getting better all the time. I think Kim would agree with that, because you're learning more, you know, the wines are getting older, and it's something that is really, I think, elusive. But Sergio has been very correct. We've had some incredible wines made in 2016 here, 2017 as well, that, you know, they've gotten some very high ratings, and we think there's even better to come. So that's a long way around answering your question, but I think it's really relevant to this industry. where we've come from. In many cases, these other countries have taken them years to get this far. I mean, many, many, many years. And, in our case, we've been at it since 1975.
We have two questions that are on here. But the first question is, are there any reds, and this is for all three of you, that you would recommend laying down for more than 5 years? Do you have any red varietals that you would suggest? And we might even go over here to Jason and Shelly just for their somm opinion too, that you would lay down for more than 5 years.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one, Heather. So with tying into the question before too about vintage, 2017 was a tremendous vintage for us. And the 2017 reds in particular are just drinking really, really well right now. We have a couple in particular that I look forward to kind of keeping in our library. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of it, but that's our 2017 Field Blend and our 2017 TNT. So the TNT is Touriga Nacional and Tempranillo. It's actually a wine club exclusive right now because we don't have a lot of it left, but that's sort of Iberian blend. It's big and bold and dark, good tannic structure. It's just drinking really well right now. That'd be a great candidate to lay down for a long period of time. And then the Field Blend is a really interesting blend of Italian and French varietals as well. Other wines that are really good right now, the 2019 whites and rosés in particular are just tremendous. The reds were a little bit more hit and miss depending on when they were harvested. But the 2019 whites and rosés, it was just a great vintage for that. And I think there's even some candidates for laying down some white wines as well. And that's not necessarily something that a lot of folks consider doing because most whites are actually designed to sort of drink fresh and young and vibrant. But there are other whites, especially like Rhone style blends that I think continue to age and develop really, really well in the bottle. And we have a white blend of Viognier, Marsanne, and Roussanne that I'm looking forward to continuing to drink over the course of years. What's really exciting is, Reddy Vineyards has been around since '97. And we'll talk a little bit about this more when we go into our individual wine. But, Dr. VJ Reddy, who founded Reddy Vineyards, even before we launched the estate brand, did a lot of home winemaking. And there's a lot of bottles in his personal cellar, just shiners, just kind of random bottlings of different varietals, things that he sort of had left over from a particular vintage that didn't get sold to our clients. And he took that and he made wine. And, he was using very, kind of basic techniques, home winemaking, very small batches. And some of those wines are drinking just phenomenal. And 2008, 9, 10 vintages. I mean, these are old wines that were made in a very simple way. But for me, when, Reddy Vineyards reached out to me and was interested in bringing me on board, I got to taste some of these wines and they were almost like epiphany wines. I couldn't believe how good they were at that age for how sort of simple and basic they were. And it really just spoke to how good quality the fruit can be and the potential that exists in the Texas High Plains for making just outstanding world-class wines.
I would add to 2017, some of the 2016 that Sergio referenced as well. Those wines have got grain suckling right into some of them in the 91 and 93 category. And most of the people that I have talked to have said, we would love to taste this wine 5 to 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. And one of the best examples I've had of that was the Xterra. We have a small line called Xterra, which is our top of the line wine. We did an Xterra Syrah in 2016, and John Michel Cage from Bordeaux visited us here, and he tasted it, and I didn't know at the time that he was one of the biggest Syrah growers in south of France, and he was just flabbergasted. He said, "This is as good as any Syrah anywhere," and he said, "I would give anything to taste this wine in 10 years." So I think those are the type of wines that taste very good now and get nice ratings, but I think they will do wonders. Sergio made a blend back in 2012 that was very popular for us. It was a Cabernet Merlot Sangiovese blend, sold out fairly quickly, and we had a few bottles around. And Sergio tasted one of them and said, "Oh my God, taste it." And but absolutely, the people that tasted it, we absolutely blew them away. And so, I think we're all probably guilty of something in Texas of selling our wines a little too soon, but we don't have really the luxury that our counterparts have in other parts of the world.
Kim, are there any red wines that you would lay down?
I'd like to say every year on the High Plains is a vintage year.
I like it.
We have, I've got a couple of Tempraneos. I've got a whole library of my Sangioveses, and I think Jason Hisaw can attest to this.
Well, I was gonna say Kim doesn't like to. He doesn't have a huge library. His motto is, if you're gonna make wine, you might as well sell it. But at the same time, I've had
fall in love with it.
yes, you hold back on some, but I've had the opportunity to taste some of his Sagamore Vineyard Sangiovese from previous vintages. I think his Carignan and Mourvedre are absolutely something to lay down. Again, I've had the opportunity to taste a lot of older Texas wine in my time in the role that I have been in. I had an opportunity to taste with Ed and Susan and Sergio. I got to try the first vintage of their Meritus, which is their Merlot Cabernet blend. And I think that was, correct me if I'm wrong, 1990 was the first vintage of that, Ed?
96.
96. Okay, I was off, but yeah. So, and we did that blind, and I was with two sommelier friends at Fall Creek, and I called it really old Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon in a blind. It still had a lot of the depth and the quality that you'll find in other wine regions. Again, I've been very fortunate to taste a lot of great older wines. So I think if you find the right red wine, that has good vintage, it has the potential to age just like any place else from either Rioja, Bordeaux, Napa Valley. If you give it the proper care, these wines will last just like you would find another wine growing region in the world. So
Probably go ahead and buy a case and then taste it every 2 or 3 years and see how it's aging. That's the safest bet.
Taste a bottle a
See
year
how
over
it's
2
going.
years.
Great advice.
Yeah, we do. I've had some Sangioveses of mine that from they're 8 or 9 years old, and they're pretty incredible. But
Yeah.
Sangiovese does very well up here. It loves the heat, and I mean, you're never going to get dark color out of them, but you are going to get, I think, the flavors kind of change over a period of time, and different aromas and values. They're beautiful. So if I was going to age, I'd say my Sangiovese, and then I think Jason's right. We've got a couple of Mourvedres from some guys up here, and Carignan, which is one of my dad's favorite grapes. He planted 5 acres of that out in front of Llano when he started it. And of course, Carignan back then was a bulk grape from the Central Valley in California. Now, if you have old vine Carignan anywhere in California, it's $4,000 or $5,000 a ton now. So it's another grape that does very well, and it does age very nicely. I think it has a tannic structure that holds up, and the color holds up. So, but Jason knows that I just drink them. We just drink them. It's just the way we are here.
Why hold on? I mean, 2 or 3 years max, but yes, we do.
Yeah.
I am that guy that will I have a couple bottles from Fall Creek, from McPherson, from Llano Estacado that I have set aside that I want to see how it progresses over the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm not going to touch them. I just want to see what they'll do. And, I think with time, people will be rewarded with some incredible flavors in those wines as they get a little older.
Warm climate fruit like we have up here on the High Plains, you're not going to, I don't think you're going to see like an 83 Bordeaux, I think a good 8 or 9 years, and I think that's a pretty good thing for us. And maybe on an exceptional summer when it's very cool and, and everything falls into place, you might get some really pretty reds that will stand out. So, but, we haven't had a lot of that in a while. So anyway, that's my take on it.
So we have two other questions. One, I'm going to introduce you, Eric, and let you, I know you see the question. It's really long, and it's a really great question, but I'm going to let you go with that. I'm going to introduce you here. Eric is with Reddy Vineyards, and you've already met him when he was just talking a second ago. I'm going to read this question to all of you. I'm going to let you address it first, Eric, and then we can go back the other way as we talk about the Grand Vitis and the Rhone blend. The question is, I'm new to Texas wine, but it seems that many, like Reddy, are releasing red wines that are a year or less old. This seems very different from California wineries. Also, it means that they have spent much less than a year in oak. Unless these are reds that are designed to drink young, like Beaujolais, why are they releasing so young and aging for such a short time in oak? Is it purely economical or something with Texas grapes? So, Eric, I'm going to let you answer the question first. And I'm actually going to send it over here to Jason too, because I know he has a thought process on this, as well as I'd like you to talk about your wine, the Grand Vitis, and what's in the bottle and what we're tasting. There is one other question. I just want to acknowledge this person, and it's about the twist tops versus a cork, and we'll go to that kind of here at the end, okay? So I didn't want you to think I didn't see your question. Go ahead, Eric, take it away.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, so what you're drinking is the 2019 Grand Vitis Red Blend. This is about 50% Grenache, 28% Cinsault, 28% Syrah, and then the remainder Cinsault, so sort of a Rhone style blend. As Stephen astutely noted, this is a younger style wine, 2019 vintage. So this was just from last year's harvest. The majority of these grapes were picked in August. They did spend 9 months in oak, so they did receive some oak treatment, and it was a combination of new and neutral oak too. So we did use a little bit of a different sort of aging regimen depending on the quality of the particular varietal as it came into the winery and then through fermentation. And then blended it later on based on sort of what we were looking to do. This is a wine that is designed to drink younger, a little bit lighter in style, smooth, easy drinking. This is a part of sort of our recently launched lifestyle collection. And it's a group of wines that are exactly that, wines that are designed to give a tremendous value to consumers, but still be sort of something you could drink every day, not something necessarily that you have to hold and cellar and wait to be ready, something you can enjoy now. This is a little bit distinct from our sort of signature wines and our reserve wines, which we typically age for a longer period of time. But really for us, one of the key things about our philosophy is that, the wine is made in the vineyard first. So Reddy Vineyards has been around since 1997, planted by Dr. VJ Reddy, just initially 5 acres. Now it is over 300 acres planted to 38 different varietals. So it makes us one of the largest vineyards in the state and also one of the most diverse. And Dr. VJ Reddy is sort of revered as one of the pioneers of the Texas wine industry because kind of as Kim was mentioning earlier, he's been on the forefront of helping producers and growers identify what types of varietals actually grow well in Texas. And with those 38 varietals, we've been able to gather a lot of research over the last 23 years on what that looks like. Up until just last summer, Reddy Vineyards was basically exclusively a grower, and we would sell our premium Texas fruit to about 30 different producers across the state. So that's really where the Reddy Vineyards roots are. It's in farming first, it's in the viticulture, and that's where our expertise lies. So last summer, we officially launched our estate brand with a number of different wines, but we still take that same philosophy that we want to really show the incredible quality of the fruit that comes from the high plains. We're not looking to replicate what's coming from California. Jason and I have had conversations about this before, and he's kind of spoken about this. We want to show what's distinct, what's unique. And again, we want the fruit to shine first. So even with our wines that are aged for a longer period of time, our signature wines in general are aged 18 months, even those see like a pretty small proportion of new oak, only 30 to 40% in general, with the idea again of letting that fruit really speak for itself. We're not looking to make big oak vanilla saturated styles of wine. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love drinking that. But that's not what we're looking for. There's already too many of those on the market. We're looking to do something a little bit different. So for us, the Grand Vitis was a way to, again, even differentiate from our own signature wines and provide Texas consumers a way to have wine a little bit more accessible. There's a question there from Roberta too about pricing. And I think that's a great observation, sort of ties in here too. You know, a lot of Texas wines that you'll find, well, first, you won't even find that many in grocery. You kind of see some of the, you know, the same producers, even in restaurants. You know, you got people like Jason doing an amazing job presenting new Texas wines to restaurants throughout the state. But because of the scale of production that you see in Texas, that tends to lead to higher prices. It's just smaller productions. The cost of production is just higher. But, you know, many of these wines are boutique. They're handcrafted, like Reddy Vineyards, family owned and operated. So there's a really important story, and you got to kind of look behind, you know, that immediate sticker shock and investigate a little bit more about what that winery is about and listen to that story, because you'll be amazed at the people who are at the forefront of Texas wine and the things that are happening here. So, you know, the Grand Vitis was designed to be still a great representation of our vineyard. It's 100% estate grown and produced single vineyard wine, but it's a little bit younger. So because of that, we're able to present it to a customer at a more affordable price point. And for us, I think that's really important because we want people to be drinking more Texas wine. And yes, we have bottles that we're charging a lot more for. And again, that cost of production is a little bit higher, but you know, the more folks that we can expose to not just Reddy Vineyards, but to Texas wine in general, I think is really, really important to be able to continue to move the Texas wine industry forward.
We have purchased fruit from Reddy Vineyards, and it's always been very nice fruit. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So he does have a lot of varieties, but it's, you know, we've gotten Grenache, other stuff. It's been good. So BJ has always done a pretty good job.
I'm gonna ask this question to Jason here. The same question, that very long question about, you know, the reds and releasing them earlier, or and from an R&DC point or from a distribution point. I'm also going to pose the same question to Shelly from a consumer as well as someone who is in the, you know, out there talking about Texas wine and what she does with the wine podcast. My question would be, I think that people don't understand that there are many different levels of wine like there are in California. And so we have those wines that we release early. I say we like I own all the vineyards, but I wish. But we're releasing the ones that are early, just like they do in California, just like they do in France, just like they do in Spain and Italy and Australia. Every place releases wines early. And then every place has wines that they lay down and they release later, or they age in oak. And I think that's a really strong point to put out there. So I would really like to hear from your points of view, Jason and Shelly, what I just kind of expanded on and where in the market that is, because as wine growers and wine makers, they're always thinking about what can I put out right now and what can I hold back and I release a little later. So
well, I'll use the perfect example. Like, again, like, so the question was like, you know, certain wines are released young, certain wines you lay down, or you're aged longer in oak and stuff like that. But you do need something like, use Brunello di Montalcino from Tuscany as an example. Like, you can't, you know, just release Brunello every year, because that has to age a certain amount of time for the Normale wines, and you have to age them even longer for the Reserva wines. So that's why they have Rosso di Montalcino, because you need a cash cow. You need something to release early that's going to allow you to age those, you know, reserve wines even longer. Same thing with Bordeaux. The Bordelais are not going to, you know, just rely on their first gross. They're going to release, you know, their second label wines or third label wines. They're, you know, their Bordeaux wines in general. So every winery, I think, has something that they're going to release younger and not as aged as long, because, you know, we need a kind of a constant cash flow to make the world go round. and again, and the person used Napa Valley in the question. So yes, well, if you use Scarecrow as an example, very high-end cult-like Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, they make another one called Emmetane. It's like, again, you have 2 or 3 different wines that you are going to make and release a little sooner than your flagship wines, just to kind of keep the bankers away from you. And I think that same applies to Texas. It applies to Spain. It applies to France. It applies to anywhere in the world they're making wine, is that you need something to kind of keep the wheels turning while you're waiting for your, whatever you want to call it, your flagship wines to be released. So yeah, again, Beaujolais, the perfect question of like Beaujolais Nouveau. That's kind of like, okay, it's the first one released during that time. But again, they have Cru Beaujolais. So that same producer that produces a Beaujolais Nouveau is also aging a Cru Beaujolais to later, for a later release. So again, it's all about, finding that angle of, what fruit is available and what do you want to do with it? And Kim's doing exactly right. You need something. You got to keep some to keep the doors open while you're waiting for your, I think the funniest example I ever think about is, think about a Sauternes. Like if you're going to be Chateau Kim and you're going to go to a bank and say, I've got an idea. I'm going to create a wine that I'm going to need. I'm going to let basically rot on the vine, and then I'm going to do it in tries, and then basically let half of it go to waste, and then I'm going to age it for 5 years in a barrel, and then I'm not going to have any money until this wine is released, and then I'm going to sell it for $1,000 a bottle. Like what bank plans or what business plan is going to go, yeah, let's do that.
None.
Something really early.
None at all.
So that's my take on that. There's cash is king in any business. And that's what makes the world go around. So yes, I think while there are some Texas wines that are released young and fresh, there are some wines that are going to be aging a little bit longer in oak. Again, that applies to every wine growing region in the world.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say too that there are so many ways that Texas is different than California. And this wine is just one example, but we also have to think about ways that Texas is different in the vineyard. So Texas has much more varietal diversity in the vineyard. So Texas grows over 60 varieties, which is way more than California. They have really focused what's growing in the vineyard down to what sells, and they're growing a whole lot of a smaller number of varieties than we are in Texas. So we've got a whole lot of varieties, and we're making all different kinds of wines. So we're using things like, and they do too, but we're using concrete eggs. So some of our wines never see oak at all. And then some wineries are getting really creative and doing things in amphora and making wines called piquette, which is not even maybe really a wine, but doing an alcoholic beverage from the byproducts of fermentation. So there are all kinds of crazy things going on in the wine industry in Texas. It's definitely a spirit of innovation, and it's Texas Wine Month. So I think we just have to celebrate all the different kinds of wines that are being made in Texas. So it's a little bit of the Wild West still. So we're still figuring out what does best in Texas, but it's a super fun time to be a part of it. This month, I know a lot of us on this call are in the Dallas area, and there's a cover story on D Magazine that says the Texas Hill Country is basically the great place to take a road trip, and that there's a wonderful story about going to taste wine in the Texas Hill Country, but there are also wineries from around the state that are mentioned, and it's getting great press. So I would encourage folks to pick it up if you're in the Dallas area, or look for it online, because it's got some great ideas about different places to visit. So it's a great month to be looking for new Texas wines, and the author of the story just highlights exactly what I've said, that it's a fun time in Texas wine because people are doing some creative stuff, and the wine just keeps getting better and better.
Kim, there's a question for you. One of the best wines from McPherson is their unoaked Dolcetto. How do you determine whether or not to oak a red, or for how long? I think we kind of already answered the question, but I want you to go down that road since they asked it.
Well, at McPherson, I'm not, we are not oak driven, okay? And we have found that on a lot of these varieties that sort of oak kind of does not really portray the beautiful picture that some of these things are, like Mourvedre and Carignan. The flavors are delicate and they're beautiful, and then you oak them, and then it sort of hides that, and so we've kind of gone out of the thing that we're not in the barrel business. We have barrels, but we're light on the oak, because I wanted to really portray the varietal character of all these grapes that are grown here on the High Plains, especially the Rhone varieties, well, native to Spain, Mourvèdre, Grenache, Carignan. These varieties are very beautiful, and with just a little bit of oak, they have a complexity. But mainly, if you let them just show their colors, and it's like a racehorse. If you just let it run, they're absolutely stunning, and they can hold up. And this is what we try to do here. I'm not. Everybody, hey, you want to buy barrels? You want to buy barrels? We have barrels, and we buy barrels every now and then, but we're not big on the oak. I want the grape to come through. So oak is like it's like a little seasoning. It's a little
Like salt,
rosemary,
pepper.
a little thyme in the thing, but it's not going to overplay our red varietals here that these guys grow up here.
I have a question, Heather.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'm reading questions, so let me close those.
Oh,
real
are there
quick.
more? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question for Ed, and I wonder, what did you say to Sergio to get him to come to Texas?
From Chile, no less.
Well, it's a long story I'll try to make short, but anyway, as I had indicated, Susan called Paul Hubb, who was a friend, one day and said, "Paul, help, we need to find some, she told him what was aspiration for her. And Paul said, "Well, I've got the perfect person for you, if you don't mind having a Chilean." And Susan apparently said, I wasn't in the room, apparently said, "Oh, I have no problem with that at all if he can speak good English, because I don't, and Ed's Spanish is poor." So Paul said, "Oh, no problem whatsoever. He can speak great." And we asked her a couple of questions. And the next thing, to show how low tech I am, we started Skyping, and I didn't know what Skyping was before that. But as Sergio and I, we Skyped for probably a month or so. Sergio came up and he looked around, and he left Santiago, and the temperature was like 33, and he got into Austin, and the temperature was 104. And he thought, "My gosh, I'm just going to see dead vines and shriveling and all this." And we didn't waste any time. We took him out to Salt Lake here, and he was shocked and healthy, and no burning, and spacing on leaves was great. And went up to our vineyard, he was shocked. And then we went out to Sertenberg Vineyards, which is one of our big producers out between Llano and Brady, and saw the same thing. Sergio started doing some research, and we got back to him, and he indicated a desire, and he said to come. And I said, "Sergio, I can't, you can go anywhere you want to in the world. Why would you want to come here?" And he said, "Well, I would love to get my kids to get an American education. I'd like to get out of the corporate world and do what I know needs to be done rather than what somebody tells me I need to do. And thirdly," he said, "there's so much potential here that I don't think even you who are optimistic realize that." And he said, "I don't want to come here I don't want to come here to make great Texas wines." He said, "I want to come here to make great wines that just happen to be from Texas." And I said, "You're our man." And so from that day on, he's like been a member of the family, and he's putting Texas on the world map with many of these wines that he's making, which is, as at least a fifth generation Texan, possibly six or more, but at least five. I don't want to be second to anybody. And Sergio's feeling is that Texas is so diverse. I mean, especially the hill country, but every region is. Even the high plains may look uniform from the ground and start analyzing the soil. There's so many different soils in the hill country. They haven't even seen a grapevine yet. And the soils are so different in different parts. And finding the right variety to the right site, with the vine grown in a proper manner, the proper winemaking technique used. Sergio says, we can do as well as anyone. And that's really, he brought that enthusiasm and that drive to Texas, and, we're eternally grateful that he did.
Yeah, and another thing is about the potential that I foresaw here. As a Chilean that was kind of a witness and also participant of the Chilean wine boom. Just a little number to throw there. In 20 years, since late 80s to the late 2000s, Chile exports grew 60 times in only 20 years. So it was amazing growth over a short period of time. I think we have the rest of the U.S. and the rest of the world to show wine from Texas. So there's that kind of potential from here. So I think we're I'm working on with that horizon, like to expand that much out of Texas.
Very nice. Eric, did you see that? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, Vicky hits it spot on. It's just, a really quaffable, easy drinking style of wine. And, it's designed to sort of be your Wednesday night wine. Not everything has to be super expensive, something, that you gotta, open up on Friday, Saturday night. My wife and I, we drink wine every single night. We certainly can't be opening $50 bottles every night. We'd go bankrupt real quick. So, we love just being able to enjoy something, easy drinking. And I think you see that sort of style in a lot of the Reddy Vineyards wines. We try to make wines that are approachable, that are smooth, but they're still complex, lots of layers. And that's kind of what we're all about. For us, one of the most exciting things is that we always try to pay homage to Texas and represent Texas 100%. And, we do that on our signature labels with the star pointing west to pay homage to West Texas. We block designate our wines, and then even our lifestyle wines. I mean, it's very clear where this wine comes from. It comes from Texas. And, we try to just own that fact. Never be ashamed of that, and just, put that out in the forefront for everybody to see that this is Texas wine. This is what you can expect. And there's lots of good stuff out here. And you should drink more of it.
All right, I'm going to go to the last question. We'll do it really quick, I promise, Jen. Why are more wine bottles? I'm a big advocate of this question, and so I wanted to kind of do it last, but I want to give it to the winemakers and the owners. Why are more wine bottles using a twist top instead of a cork?
You want me to go?
You can start with it.
Well, I've been using screw tops since I first started here, and I just like the convenience of them. There were so many problems with corks out there, and so we decided that we'd go screw top on just about 80% of our wines, because it's been shown that it keeps them fresher. The consumer, especially women who buy most of the wine in this country, they love the convenience of a screw top. You can put it back on, put it back in the fridge, leave it on the counter, whatever. And so we decided to do that, and I have never looked back. Now on cork stuff, we've gone to a great French cork, a Diam, and we've been using that for the last 6 years, and we love that. And that goes into a lot of our reserve wines and red wines. But the screw top still is, to me, a way to go to keep a wine. It's been proven that it keeps it fresher. Willamette Valley Vineyards did a 12-year study on their cork for their Pinot Noir, and at the end of the study, the screw tops won out. So,
Sergio?
Yeah, I can be talked into screw caps. I've used it in the past, but there's one thing. Well, and another fact is that wine legends have been made with corks, so they do work. But the one thing that they do is that they allow some oxygen to go into the bottle right after bottling. But it's a curve that goes down with time until it really seals. That hasn't been being able to imitate it with any synthetic or screw cap kosher. Their oxygen intake or their oxygen allowance into the bottle is constant, different levels, but constant over the years. So yes, if you need the freshman to the fresh style to keep, you choose a very close screw cap, for example, but you don't get the oxygen at the beginning. So there are advantages and disadvantages of both. But I think that the cork does a really good job in just allowing the right amount of oxygen at the right time for some aging. But I can see that yeah, every from 0.5 to 2% of the bottles are going to be kind of ruined because of the cork. I get that.
Eric?
Yeah, for me, I'm a huge proponent of screw tops. I love them. To Kim's point, I'm just as much in favor about the convenience as anybody else. And I think, when I'm not finishing a bottle on an evening, just being able to put that screw top back on, stick it in the fridge, I'm fairly confident that wine will taste pretty yummy the next couple of days. So I think from a consumer standpoint, it really makes sense in that way. But also to Sergio's point, there's also a consumer perception still that, corks are superior. And, we are currently putting all of our wines, even our white wines, under cork, just because, it's more about that consumer expectation. And I honestly, I think it's kind of unfortunate because, there's a lot of different issues with corks beyond just the fact that there might be some spoilage, environmental issues, sustainability, stuff like that. But, screw top technology is becoming really sophisticated and really advanced. It might not quite be the same as a cork, but you can get a lot of the same types of influences and characteristics over time that you get from a cork from certain types of screw tops, maybe not all of them, but I would love to see the industry continue to move forward and use more of them. For me, I think I'm one of those folks who, the wine industry needs to just become more accessible overall, and it needs to just be really smart about how they're getting products to consumers. Sometimes wine can just be perceived as really stuffy and old-fashioned, and I think that's really a huge liability for everybody in the wine industry. So finding ways to be innovative, create new types of products, use new technologies is really great. And I don't think that should ever come at the expense of making quality wine. But at the same time, we should be able to be malleable and innovate and be flexible and change with the times too. And I think that will only do the entire industry better. And Texas is a great place because, as Shelly mentioned, this is where innovation is coming from right now in the wine industry in the United States, with the different types of varietals that we're using, to some of the different things that we're making, pet nats, more wines in cans, all kinds of different things. It's hugely beneficial. It's really exciting to be on the producer side, but I think it's awesome for consumers as well, who are able to see and be on the receiving end of just really delicious Texas wine.
Very nice. I think that as somebody who just came off of the restaurant floor just a year ago, I'm a proponent of both, depending on what I'm serving or what's going with it. But man, I'll tell you what, screw tops are so easy to open up on the table side now. It just makes for an easy presentation. But you do have that perception that you absolutely, if I'm opening up a $1,000 bottle of Bordeaux or, something, a 50-year-old Burgundy, I'm probably going to go with the cork because that's what they used 50 years ago. So I get both sides of that story. And it was a great question. Thank you so much.
We've had a lot of great questions tonight.
A lot.
I think I would like to raise a glass and thank all of you for joining us tonight. Hopefully next year we will be doing this in person in the middle of the fair and seeing what these amazing wines actually do pair with here at the Great State Fair of Texas. So thank you for being part of this. And anybody who's interested in getting that box of the Blue Ribbon selection, you can find it on the website at bigtex.com, and then find everybody's wines at each of their different winery websites. So thanks, everybody. Happy Texas Wine Month.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Jason, Shelly, thank y'all very much for having me, and salud.
Salud.
Prendiamo.
Thanks, everybody.